As the game of Airsoft ages, grows, and fills with more and more options for the equipment that is available to us, one could imagine the palette for replicas would as well, to the point that nearly every real firearm has an Airsoft counterpart. However, there are so many platforms that have been swept under the rug by clouds of M4s and AKs and maybe even the M1911. So for today's countdown, we'll be going over just a few of the most underused and underrated guns in the hobby of Airsoft. There are so many that I could list, but to refrain from filling this list with rare and discontinued guns that only one or two companies ever made, like the Tanaka PM63, the Ares DSR-1, or the SOCOM Gear shell ejecting M82 Barrett, I'm going to focus on more broader platforms, starting off with two of the most obvious rifles. No one should be surprised that these would be here on this list, but the G3 and the FAL are severely uncommon to see nowadays. I don't want to sound like I've been playing Airsoft for decades, since I've only been playing for about 4 years as of November 2017, but when companies like Tokumuri, Classic Army, and even G&G were putting together G3s and their variants, H&K enthusiasts loved to show them off, and they still do. You can even find entire forums and Facebook groups dedicated to the G3. They make lovely DMR bases that would greatly stand apart from all the 5.56 Airsoft DMR builds that you see so often in either a positive or a negative aspect. JG still makes the G3 an affordable cost, and now LCT even sells a heavyweight model wrapped in a steel receiver, so at least there's still some support for this rifle, but don't expect to actually see more than maybe one or two at any field. That is, if you actually see one at all. You can go months without seeing a G3, and maybe even years unless you know one player who actually owns one. Then as for the FAL and its variants like the SA58, the same can be said. Ares and King Arms made the full-sized L1A1s about 8 years ago, and some companies did make the SA58 models like Echo 1 and ASG and even Lancer Tactical, so the support is still there. Ares even re-released their famed L1A1s in both polymer and wood furniture, so thanks a lot for that. The controls are battle proven, their barrels are great for long range work, and the importance of both of these rifles are legendary, so why don't we see a little bit more from them? Even after a high-end company like LCT makes one, just like how we wanted, we still don't buy them, and we still don't see them. I guess that's just how Airsoft is. Next up at number 8, I'll be picking on a gun that I actually will be picking up myself if my wallet allows me to. Why is the Z61 Scorpion so uncommon now? I mean really, CQB is such a hot topic in Airsoft, especially in places like California, Japan, and in the UK, so I would expect to see this compact piece so much more, but I never do. Actually, if you really want to look around, the VZ61 is practically dead as a platform, despite the AEPs being so cheap and the KWA model being so fun to play around with. I see them in stores all the time, but I never actually see them in the wild. It could be due to the high cap of just making everything else obsolete for competitive CQB games, but as a future owner, I think they can actually have some real merit in close quarters battles thanks to their size, large magazines, and their rarity adds some value to me as well. But the wire stocks and the AEP's range is pretty terrible, I have to admit. Then while we're talking about SMGs, why is the Uzi as common to see as Bigfoot in your backyard? Tokumuri made the full-sized Uzi, Maruzen made the micro, and KWC is still producing the CO2 mini Uzi, and that's it, unless you count the ones made by Well and Double Eagle. The Uzi is admittingly dated, but I'd greatly take a full-size AEP Uzi or even a gas blowback mini Uzi any day over the Crytac that you greatly boast about in the comments of any gun review anyone makes ever on YouTube. Seriously guys, there's more to Airsoft than just Crytac, so before you post this comment on any review on YouTube, just go outside and think about your life choices first. Anyways, if anyone could get to work on bringing back the full-sized Uzis, I'd greatly appreciate it, but let's be real. If the AEP Uzi went on the market again from, I don't know, Tokumuri, or a gas blowback version from KWC for around $140 to $240, would you even consider buying one? That's a serious question. I think the Uzi is severely underrated, and it would be great to see them return, and hopefully I'm not the only one out there. This next one on the list is of no surprise to me, as their whole class is pretty much an underrated spectrum, but when I stated that the AUG is underused, I was told that the Tavor is underrated. Okay, so let's look at the facts. The AUG, or AUG, is not the most popular bullpup out of the bunch, despite being one of the first successful bullpups in the real world. Many players don't like the look of the AUG, and a lot of techs out there downright despise working on them. I myself would love to have a standard A1 model, but to a lot of other people, if it's not an A3, then just don't mention the AUG to me. Just throw that whole conversation in the trash. On the other hand, the Tavor is very well received by a lot of airsofters from new to long-time players. They take standard M4 magazines, they get the limelight in a lot of pro videos, and they're pretty well-rounded primaries. However, the fans and friends that helped me put this video together told me that they're losing their popularity fast. This is funny to hear since people ask for the AUG A3 so much because they want to use M4 magazines with their AUGs. But then you have a bullpup that does take M4 magazines right from the box, and it's losing interest? I don't want the future of airsoft to just become M4 only, so I love guns like the Tavor that bridges the gap of it's not M4, but it still uses the same magazines. I could talk on and on about bullpups like the F2000, the UAR, the PDRC, and even the L85, which is another greatly underappreciated piece of work. But as for the AUG, it's a retro design that never was really done right in AEG form like the FAMAS, and the Tavor is just overshadowed by all the normal M4s out there. Why risk getting something different when you could just go with something you know will work? That's the problem here for a lot of these underused guns. That doesn't mean I wouldn't recommend them. Try them before you go and blindly hate on them. This is where things get a bit weird. As you may know, the G36 is one of the most popular platforms in Europe. Watch any Scout the Doggy video and you'll understand what I'm talking about. But here in the US, they can be a bit scarce. I own one myself, and I think they're a solid contender against any gun out there on the field. So where are they when I go out to play? I could probably count the amount of G36s I've seen all year here in Texas on one hand. This would be like if you went to Switzerland and you couldn't find any M4s, but instead you saw nothing but SIG 550s and 552s. Speaking of which, the SIG rifles are pretty much non-existent too, aren't they? My friend Dan has like 12 550s, and besides him, I haven't seen a single SIG rifle in over a year. Yet I know somewhere out there's probably some state or country where they're everywhere. Hell, I know I'm going to get a comment telling me that they see them all the time at their local field. I'd probably get a SIG 552, they look pretty good, but I will have to get a bunch of unique magazines for it. But I know I'll be getting another good looking platform out of another uncommon gun, while my G36 can just stay without any attachments since it already looks good. Another rifle you don't need to do anything to would be nearly any M14. Just like the G3 and FAL, the M14 can be a really good DMR build, or you could just run it raw with a nice wood stock. I have two G&G Top Tech M14s and people love them, especially my walnut stock model. So if they're well liked, why are they just disappearing lately? What replaced them? I remember the SEMA M14s being all over the place just a couple years ago because new players would buy them up and local shops would sell them off. But now, if I see an M14, I'm more shocked if anything. GMP made them, G&G made them, SEMA, Tokamarui, and even WE. So am I missing something here? Maybe the age of the battle rifle is just dead now. No one wants a big old M14 or G3 or even a SIG 550 anymore. I should probably just get a Crytac. At number 1 now, I have probably the most broad decision to conclude this countdown, and that simply would be World War II guns. This is of course an exception of the M1911, since that's probably the most used pistol in all of Airsoft, but as for stuff like M1 Garands, BARs, MP40s, and so on, you just don't see them very often. When you do see them, they're usually on display somewhere or just guns that people bring out to talk about, because they're always low-end guns that creak a lot or have notorious problems with them. I'm not saying that all of them are like this, but a lot of them are like this. I've messed with the ICS Garands, and I have a Lancer Tactical BAR, and those are some really fun guns with some really challenging controls attached to them. So it does take a bit of time to get used to World War II guns, but if you're the kind of guy bringing them out to normal weekend skirmish games, then you should get a few good looks from fellow players. The day I see someone going into a game with an Arisaka or an M1903 in full kit, I'm going to film a loadout video with him or her. If you do get into this niche of guns, you do get a lot of choices, so go ahead and explore some sites and maybe look into getting a specialty kit to stand out from the crowd around you. Even Ray Charles can step into any shop and make an M4 loadout, but if you can join up on any game and come out on top with any of these underrated guns, then you should feel some real pride in yourself. Maybe after this countdown, we just might see some players with some VZ61s or an AUG or even some Thompsons, but I might need to put together another countdown together for even more underused guns. So go ahead and let me know in the comments down below of what you think belongs on that next episode. And be sure to give me an explanation as to why you think they're so underused, and hopefully I can get another episode together soon. Also guys, be sure to spank a like on this countdown as it really helps me out now. or you could even share this video with a friend if he happens to own one of these underused guns. I hope you enjoyed my show, but until our next video drops from the city of San Antonio, this has been Scott Hollenbeck, and I'll be sure to see you all next time.